Hey Pinewood, 5th grade. Hope you are doing good. Hope you're listening to your new teachers at home. Make sure you behave and listen to them like you do at school. This is lesson 13 and 14 of Learn Zillion. We're going to learn something new today. We're going to learn about Helen Keller, who, like Rose and Ben, have some communication issues as a child. We're going to dissect it. I'm going to give you a little assignment to do at the end, and plus to watch a movie that's called The Miracle Worker, and your Miracle Worker, and you want to watch the 2000 version of it. It's a really awesome movie, and it will lead a little bit into what we're talking about. This is like we have done in the other units, where we pull just certain chapters from another source. So please just listen. I'm going to read it to you and we'll discuss it as we go. And then I will give you a writing assignment at the end and we'll talk about it. This is The Story of My Life, Part 1, Chapter 4 by Helen Keller. And Helen Keller was deaf-mute. And so that's why, she had some communication issues. But she had an aha moment in life, like a lot of us do. And there was a certain person who changed her life for her, and that's what we're going to learn about today. The most important day I remember in all my life is the one on which my teacher, Ann Mansfield Sullivan, came to me. I am filled with wonder when I consider the immeasurable contrast between the two lives which it connects. It was the 3rd of March, 1887, 3 months before I was 7 years old. So you can tell that this story is definitely written from her perspective because of the eyes that we see in there. On the afternoon of that eventful day, I stood on the porch, dumb, expectant. I guessed vaguely from my mother's signs and from the hurrying to and fro in the house that something unusual was about to happen. So I went to the door and waited on the steps. The afternoon sun penetrated the mass of honeysuckles that covered the porch and fell on my upturned face. My fingers lingered almost unconsciously on the familiar leaves and blossoms which had just come forth to greet the sweet southern spring. I did not know what the future held of marvel or surprise for me. Anger and bitterness had preyed upon me continually for weeks, and the deep languor had succeeded this passionate struggle. Have you ever been at sea in a dense fog when it seemed as if a tangible white darkness shut you in, and the great ship, tense and anxious, groped her way toward the shore with plummet and sounding line, and you waited with beating heart for something to happen? There's Lily. I was like that ship before my education began, only I was without compass or sounding line and had no way of knowing how near the harbor was. Light, give me light, was the wordless cry of my soul, and the light of love shone on me in that very hour. I felt approaching footsteps. I stretched out my hand as I supposed to my mother. Someone took it. It was caught up and held close in the arms of her who had come to reveal all things to me, and more than all things else, to love me. The morning after my teacher came, she led me into her room and gave me a doll. The little blind children at the Perkins Institution had sent it, and Lauren Bridgman had dressed it. But I didn't know this until afterwards. When I had played with it in a little while, Miss Sullivan slowly spelled into my hand the word DOLL. I was at once interested in this finger play and tried to imitate it. When I finally succeeded in making the letters correctly, I was flushed with childish pleasure and pride. Miss Sullivan had just taught her a way of communication, so that helped her to understand things. Running downstairs to my mother, I held up my hand and made the letters for the doll. I did not know that I was spelling a word or even that words existed. I was simply making my fingers go in monkey-like imitations. In the days that followed, I learned to spell in this uncomprehending way a great many words, among them pen, hat, cup, and a few verbs like sit, stand, and walk. But my teacher had been with me several weeks before I understood that everything has a name. One day while I was playing with my new doll, Miss Sullivan put my big rag doll into my lap also and spelled DOLL and tried to make me understand that doll applied to both. Earlier in the day, we had had a tussle over the words mug and water. Miss Sullivan had tried to impress it upon me that mug is mug and that water is water, but I persisted in confounding the two. In despair, she had dropped the subject for the time, only to renew it at the first opportunity. I became impatient at her repeated attempts, and seizing the new doll, I dashed it upon the floor. I was keenly delighted when I felt the fragments of the doll broken at my feet. Neither sorrow nor regret followed my passionate outburst. I had not loved the doll. In the still dark world in which I lived, there was no strong sentiment or tenderness. I felt my teacher sweep the fragments to one side of the hearth, and I had a sense of satisfaction that the cause of my discomfort was removed. She brought me my hat, and I knew I was going out into the warm sunshine. This thought, if a wordless sensation may be called a thought, made me hop and skip with pleasure. We walked down the path in the well house, attracted by the fragrance of the honeysuckle with which it was covered. Someone was drawing water, and my teacher placed my hand under the spout as the cool stream gushed over one hand. She spelled into the other the word water, first slowly, then rapidly. I stood still, my whole attention fixed upon the motions of her fingers. Suddenly, I felt a misty consciousness as of something forgotten, a thrill of returning thought, and somehow the mystery of language was revealed to me. That was her aha moment. I knew then that water meant the wonderful, cool something that was flowing over my hand. That living word awakened my soul, gave it light, hope, joy, set it free. Tons of figurative language there. There were barriers still, it is true, but barriers that could in time be swept away. I felt the well house eager to learn. Everything had a name, and each name gave birth to a new thought. As we returned to the house, every object which I touched seemed to quiver with life. That was because I saw everything with the strange new sight that had come to me. On entering the door, I remembered the doll I had broken. I felt my way to the hearth and picked up the pieces. I tried vainly to put them together. Then my eyes filled with tears, for I realized what I had done. And for the first time, I felt repentance and sorrow. I learned a great many words that day. I do not remember what they all were, but I do know that my mother, father, sister, teacher were among them. Words that were to make the world blossom for me, like Aaron's rod with flowers. It would have been difficult to find a happier child than I was as I lay in my crib at the house of that eventful day and lived over the joys it had brought me, and for the first time longed for a new day to come. So you can see Miss Sullivan's aha moment was when she learned water was flowing from the pump. And just like us, we have our aha moments. Now, here's your assignment. You need to write me a paragraph just summarizing what this story was about. So if you need to listen to it several times on YouTube, you're more than welcome to. Why is Anne important? You know, our theme for Wonderstruck is communication, and Anne being deaf and mute, she can't hear or she can't see. So she had, just like in the book, she had numerous barriers to overcome. And you remember when we read in Wonderstruck that Rose, the little girl, how it mentioned in the book that Anne Sullivan and Helen Keller were one of the important people in the lip reading book. And Anne became very well educated. She had several degrees. She definitely overcame her obstacles in life. But you need to write me your summary. Or no, I'm sorry, scratch that. The summary comes after you watch the movie. Okay, watch the movie with your parents. It is an awesome movie. Please understand that the little girl that plays Helen Keller in the movie is not deaf and is not blind. So she is an awesome little actress. And it truly gives you like the finger spelling that Anne Sullivan. And please understand that when she went to college, Anne Sullivan traveled with her so that she could become more educated and she could definitely overcome these obstacles in her life. But why Anne is important, we need to know, because it was definitely a breakthrough in the deaf community. What she teaches Helen, how this makes Helen feel. You see in the beginning, she feels one way and she kind of feeds off of her parents' emotions, her mother's emotions. And then at the end, it's like she is a totally different child. Her attitude and her mood changes after that aha moment. And how important the water was to Anne. It was that one thing that made Anne realize that barrier, that light bulb came on, that barrier was gone. And just how Anne Sullivan actually taught Helen Keller to communicate. So your assignment, okay? Your assignment is watching a movie. Go watch the movie, The Miracle Worker, the 2000 version, and then write me a quick summary. And in that summary, make sure you mention the theme of our book, Wonderstruck, and how communication and how important communication is. And then we will have Miss Lowen and I are going to record y'all some more lessons, because we're going to get you through this book so you can see how it ends and how Ben and Rose are actually going to, their stories are going to tie in together. Love y'all. Bye.